Hello all. Welcome to International Women's Day. I'm Pooja Bothra, Associate Editor, ETHRWorld. At ETHRWorld, we enable learning in the work world, and we take the responsibility to bring forth industry trends around inclusivity to mark this special day. We want to initiate a dialogue on the inclusion of women and other marginalized groups in the workforce. For that, we've invited Heidi Robertson, the Group Head of Diversity and Inclusion, ABB. More than just for good optics, adopting DEI reinforces a company's competitiveness and brand appeal while simultaneously creating a more level playing field for the people who ultimately drive the business world. Welcome to the show, Heidi.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Heidi, without much ado, I'd like to come straight to you with one question, which is, what are the elementary principles around which you've created a DEI strategy at ABB?
Thank you, Pooja. Thank you for having me, and thank you for that starting question. First of all, we have been many of us creating the DEI strategy at ABB, not only myself, but it's really a joint effort. But it's really based on the main principles of striving for a culture where differences are celebrated, realizing the power of differences. And we are driving diversity across all dimensions at ABB. So this is not a project, it's not a standalone element, it's really across all dimensions, putting inclusion at the forefront. Our strategy, the three-pillar strategy that we believe leads to success, is governance, inclusive leadership and culture, and then also partnerships. To really enhance the agenda across these dimensions and driving inclusion across all dimensions, we have also executive committee sponsorship coupled with our ERG, so employee resource networks movement on the ground. And we are seeing those, that setup, top down and bottom up, as a strong force of driving the progress you want to see across ABB. We also have very clear accountability with clear actions and targets. And a main principle is also that we hold ourselves accountable through regular follow-up and true ownership across the organization. So that is, in short, how we would like to drive diversity and inclusion at ABB, and also how we have set up the strategy to succeed with that.
Thank you, Heidi, for those wonderful points. Next, I'd like to ask you is that the business dynamics are very complex today because change is so rapid and so constant. How do you keep policy making agile at the top to be able to make a real difference in the DEI mandate that you set out for?
Yes, so policy making in a dynamic business environment, I think you're spot on. And in the dynamics of the world today, a geopolitical increased tension, we're seeing polarization and so on. I think we will only succeed if we come together across all sectors, government, private sector, and civil society. And we need to keep up with each other. We need to collaborate. Collaboration is one of the 4 values of ABB and very key, not only internally at ABB, but also across all stakeholders. And as mentioned, as we are navigating a world with increased geopolitical tension, polarization, and so on, I think it's challenging to make a generic statement on this one. But on the positive side, when it comes to policy making outside, so really how this is driven also on the governmental side, I think we have great examples. For example, the EU Gender Equality Strategy, EU Pay Transparency Directive, and also here in India, the listed companies have to set gender targets mandated by the market regulator CB, and also then the extended maternity leave according to the Maternity Benefit Act of 2017. We're seeing increasing accountability taken on all of these 3 sectors. And I think, again, to succeed, we need to go hand in hand. And this is not something we can do alone. So the more we are collaborating across stakeholders, the more we will see the progress as a whole and in the world.
So Heidi, like you brought about that, one is a global policy Second is the implementation at the local level. So how do you ensure there is parity in the adoption of those policies, which probably are created at the global level across geographies? So if you could share some insights out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is key. I think we are a company with more than 100 countries. You're present in more than 100 countries and more than 105,000 employees. And of course, there is no such thing as one fits all. We need to localize, we need to adapt. So what we have done, and again, back to the basic principles of our D&I strategy, is that we have a global standard, a direction, and with really the pillars of the foundation. But then that needs to be translated into meaningful actions in the local markets. It is a huge difference how you drive this agenda in Norway compared to the US, compared to India, China, Saudi Arabia, and so on. So for us, it's very important that this topic is owned and driven by all of the employees. And hence, to be able to do so, we also must really support and empower our people to make decisions on our pillars. Be the governance, be the partnerships, be the leadership and culture, but of course underpinned by a very strong foundation, driven and held accountable at the top. So I think, and some examples could be then, for example, how we have been launching our gender neutral global parental leave in the context of culture. Also trained more than 10,000 leaders on how to interrupt unconscious bias and become inclusive leaders. The global partnerships with Stonewall, with UN, with Catalyst, and so on, but yet making sure that this is translated into what partnership makes sense for you locally. What do you want to drive? And of course, also taking into consideration the local culture differences and legislation also, actually. So I think it's a challenging yet a very exciting way of driving a strategy, because you need to have a clear direction, driven and held accountable at the top, yet ensure that it's translated also then when landing in the 100+ markets. And here I think maybe to mention also the metrics are important. So we have 3 ESG targets: safety, CO2 emissions, and women in leadership. And they are linked also to all our financial quarterly reporting and so on. So we're very transparent on where are we going to go. And of course, also if we are lagging behind, or currently we have been really well ahead of the target setting. But I think the communication and the transparency piece around what we're trying to achieve is very important, and it should be across the organization.
I totally agree to that, Heidi. And, I understand that best of strategies fail when the execution does not happen. And to have step-by-step execution plan for your, far-flung geographies is also important. Since we are celebrating International Women's Day today, please share with us why gender inclusivity continues to be a challenge in the global work world.
Absolutely. I mean, despite progress, gender gaps persist in various dimensions. And for example, the Global Gender Gap Report 2023 highlights disparities in labor force participation, leadership, and skilling patterns across industries and regions. So this is really not an issue we're seeing only in one market. This is a global universal matter that we all need to take responsibility for. One example, labor force participation, full-time participation, part-time, or not at all being part of the labor force. Also the post-pandemic impact that hit women in particularly hard. And then of course, culture norms and stereotypes. And I'm sitting here in Norway, Scandinavia, where I would say we are very emancipated and equal opportunities in terms of gender is very strong. Yet I would say there is a way to go in terms of the social norms on picking up children at school, having the third shift, as we are saying. And we are at the forefront in the world of this topic, and we still have a long, long way to go. So I think the social norms, the sharing of tasks, the labor participation, it's a universal issue and matter. Furthermore, I think bias plays a role linked to the cultural norms and the stereotypes. There are bias be it in recruitment element and nominating to leadership profiles and roles. And I think we need to work on this one massively. We have done that at ABB because we realize that this is not something we can just completely take off. It's there, but we need to be aware of them and act upon them. So when you are, for example, in a position to apply for a job, how is that job ad crafted? Does it really resonate to all types of personalities, genders, ethnicities, and so on? Is it really inclusive? And also, when you're arriving for an interview, how is that interview panel looking? Are we really ensuring a fair process? And of course, also, I think it's important on this topic that we as women take full responsibility and step up to own our own agenda as well. Much easier said than done. And of course, a lot of cultural elements to this as well. But by empowerment and support, I think we can really create a stronger participation, visibility, and hopefully also better world. We need to tap into the full talent pipeline, not only one, but we also need that participation for the greater good of society.
Heidi, the remote work world and the hybrid work models which are prevalent today, do you think these work formats require certain kinds of, adaptation or tools to be able to boost DEI agenda in companies?
Yeah, it's interesting because in 2018, we started launching a pilot on flexible working, knowing that flexibility is key to inclusion across the full life cycle of an employee, man or woman. And it was, I would say, a bit challenging. Oh, but why should we impose or include such flexibility? We had some pilots, and our leaders were very positively surprised. Wow, it's a good thing. Then pandemic hit. Suddenly, overnight, we were all virtual. And what happened? We managed, all of us, very well. We managed countries, we managed companies, we managed families. So, of course, post-pandemic, the virtual world has come to stay. And what I saw and we have seen as a huge benefit to the inclusion agenda, flexibility, has now been more standard and more norm. Yet, at the other hand, people coming back to office in places, whilst maybe some people are staying more back. And what is happening then? Are we then continuing to see a difference in terms of how you will be evaluated for opportunities, how you will be considered, and of course also visibility in terms of networking, stakeholder management, and so on? I think for this to work, I think it's very important to not say one fits all again. Some people or some organizations have their own rules, but for me, it's also about making the decisions happen at the group level. I think it's important again that we are involving our people in setting the standards, so we can have a foundation as a guideline, but then again, it depends from group to group and department to department how this would actually turn out. So my recommendation is always to say, have a discussion within your team. Ensure to have clear communication and also expectations. And of course, then make sure that you establish the norms in terms of communication channels, response times, meeting etiquette, and so on. If you want to really build a culture, at least you would need to be able to have the camera on and to be responsive and so on. So there are certain elements I think needs to be set in terms of an alignment also. There needs to be equitable access to technology. So that is working, obviously. And I think it's also important then to think about the structure of the meetings, be it rotating the meeting times, ensuring that we accommodate the various time zones if it's a global company, using inclusive language, and of course also in a virtual world, make sure to seek the diverse perspectives. Ask proactively, make sure that everyone is on board. It's much more difficult to really pick up the underlying elements and so on when we are virtual than if you are in the room together. I think also it's important to then ensure that we have regular feedback and surveys, ensuring that there is some kind of anonymous way of checking in. And I think finally it's putting a high expectation and push to leadership. So how do you lead? Lead by inspiration, by empathy, and by understanding, and utilizing, of course, the core values of ABB: collaboration, care, curiosity. So I think this is kind of again, not a one fits all. It's finding what works for you, your company, your department, your team. And I think listening to the team is incredibly important to succeed with this.
What would you advise our viewers? How can they make DEI a competitive advantage for their businesses?
I think this is extremely important, understanding the big why. And not just because it's the right thing to do, but also understanding the underlying competitive advantage. And embracing diversity, equity, and inclusion isn't just a moral imperative, as I mentioned. It is also a strategic business advantage for any organization. And why? If we look at innovation and creativity, diverse teams bring together varied perspectives, experiences, and backgrounds. And of course, this diversity will, in its turn, fuel creativity and lead to more innovative solution, products, and services. So I think that linkage to the business advantage is very important to understand. Of course, also the market relevance and customer base. So really mirroring the market, mirroring the customer base, very important. And reflecting then the demographics of customers will, of course, be a very big add-on. And I think also talent acquisition and retention. When we have a strong diversity and inclusion strategy in place, as I mentioned earlier, that will attract top talent. And candidates seek to join inclusive workplaces where they can feel that they belong, they can come as they are and be themselves and grow and thrive. So I think there are so many strong elements for the why, but I can, of course, also continue in terms of the employee engagement. Inclusive environments foster employee engagement, as I already mentioned. And again, that will lead to productivity and again, the success of the company. So I would say in summary that a robust D&I strategy isn't just about doing the right thing. It's about gaining a competitive edge in a rapidly changing world. And by fostering an inclusive culture, all companies position themselves for a long-term success and also resilience in an increasing VUCA world, I would say.
Heidi, you've given me fabulous points on each of these questions. Each of your response are great takeaways for our viewers. But is there anything probably I missed asking you and you would like to add?
Well, the question that I often get is how to build the strategy, how to get it kicked off. And how did I do that for a company of the size that we are at ABB? And I think maybe to leave the audience with the key takeaways after now, the fourth year into our D&I strategy 2030, it was to, number one, make sure that this is a top leadership priority. This is not an HR task or a sustainability or communications person's task. This is ownership at the highest level, owned by all of us, but role modeled by the leadership. So I think if you don't have the C-suite, the CEO and the executive committee with you, it's going to be challenging. So my first number one point is to make sure that the why and the direction is clearly understood and supported and driven from that level. Number two would be then also how to, when you have that in place, how to mobilize the people on the ground, because you need that moment. It's not enough only with the executive sponsorship. You need to mobilize. So to really empower the employee resource networks groups, the people coming together in the various groups made by employees for employees, and empower them to drive the agenda, to channel back to us. What do you see important drivers and elements of an inclusive company within your perspectives. And then, of course, having very, very clear targets that are being followed up and also that we are held accountable for it. So I think those three elements has been key to the success of this strategy at ABB, and then underpinned by a continuous stakeholder management. So you need to understand, okay, so of course in a company like ours, with so many people, you will have people at various levels of maturity, and of course also buy-in. But you need to accept that and to ensure a good dialogue, an open dialogue, and also be open for the other side of the views on this topic. So I think to have patience, resilience, and persistence, because this is not done overnight. It's really a journey that takes years. But if you believe in it, and if you have the full strength with ownership across the levels, you will eventually succeed with the aim to drive diversity across all dimensions and inclusion of all. And that finally, diversity and inclusion becomes part of the DNA of the company.
Thank you, Heidi, for joining us on this International Women's Day. I agree, it's a journey. It takes X number of years, but as we move from one year to another, let's hope that next year, we are sitting with better numbers. We're sitting with more robust implementation of a DEI strategy. Thank you for, sharing your insights around integrating DEI into business DNA. As this year's hashtag is Inspired Inclusion. So it was wonderful to have you here and share your wonderful points with our audience. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really a pleasure. And let's continue to inspire inclusion together.
Thank you.